So good morning, everyone. We will have one session on DSD. My part is mostly theoretical, in whom we will suspect what are the things we can do. There are some things, and then after me there will be a session in which actual cases will be there, and in the evening we will have one-to-one session, like small group session. In that, many dilemmas and difficult issues in DSD we will deal. So all three sessions are connected. Like one by one, you should listen all the three sessions. So what is the terminology? Intersex was the older terminology. It did not give anything. So in 2006, when DSD guidelines came, it was it was huge effort, and still they are very much relevant. In that, they told that these terminology should be etiology based. That intersex doesn't give any additional information. So in that, they told the atypical development of chromosomal, gonadal, and or anatomic sex. It should be called DSD, not intersex. So in that they introduced the term disorders of sex development. And later on, now in last 4 or 5 years, that term disorders of sex development is becoming differences of sex development because of the stigmata of the disorder. Because this is not disorder for many, for all of us. It is a variant of normal. So this is differences of sex development. In the same way, earlier we used to call it ambiguous genitalia. So now everyone is saying that it should be called atypical genitalia. There is no ambiguity. This is atypical, then typical genitalia. So that classification redefined, and it was according to etiology. We'll just brush through that also. So coming to when to evaluate an infant with DSD, in which cases we should think that child will need evaluation. So overt genital ambiguity. I have used the term, still in most of the publications it's there. I told that because now many publications are saying that we will use atypical. So both terms are there in my presentation. So, and anytime you see ambiguity that we cannot decide upfront that what is the gender of the child, then he or she needs evaluation. Child need evaluation. Even anatomical defect, like cloacal exostrophy has a defect which involves not only genitalia, many parts. So that also may need evaluation. Then apparent female genitalia with signs of virilization, like enlarged clitoris, posterior labial fusion, or an inguinal or labial mass. Then apparent male genitalia with signs of undervilization, that is bilateral undescended testes, micropenis, isolated perineal hypospadias, or mild hypospadias with undescended testes. A family history of DSD, such as CAIS, or a discordance between the genital appearance or prenatal test. All these conditions require evaluation. So, in short, external genitalia which are sufficiently ambiguous to hamper sex assignment at birth need evaluation. And if we have already tested prenatally, any discrepancy between antenatal test and now the presentation, we should evaluate further. That was for infants. If a child comes late also, in that case, it may be late recognized genital atypia, or it may be inguinal hernia or mass in a female reared child, or delayed or incomplete progression of the puberty, virilization in a female, breast development in a male, primary amenorrhea, and gross cyclical hematuria in a male. These last 5 are all atypical pubertal progression. That should lead a suspicion that child may have anything else than atypical puberty only. He or she may have underlying DSD. So to give a perspective, what we are dealing, its prevalence is around one child in every 5,000 is affected with DSD. And this all data is Western data. In India, we do not have any national registry or no multicentric trials are there. So this is taken from Western countries data. Indian prevalence is probably higher than that, because many disorders in which we have some large data, they are higher than Western prevalence. And probably this is due to our consanguinity in many communities. CAH is the most common overall cause of the DSD, and in females also. Overall, males and females also, CAH is the most common cause. The worldwide incidence of the 46XX DSD, consisting primarily of CAH, mostly 21 hydroxylate deficiency, is estimated to around 1:14 or 15,000 births. Gonadal dysgenesis and androgen insensitivity syndromes are the common causes in males, like reared as males, or 46XY DSD. CAH and mixed gonadal dysgenesis constitute around half of the cases of the all DSDs. So these are some Indian studies which had looked in small populations what are their etiologies. So we can see that overall most common is CH. In most studies, last one is was done only XY. So they have only XY causes. Most common XS, CH, only CH. Most common XY, Indian, Western data says gonadal dysgenesis is also very common. But somehow in Indian scenario, we don't find that. Probably it may have, because gonadal biopsy is required to diagnose dysgenesis. That is the gold standard. So we may probably many of the people are not reaching to that. So in Indian study, androgen insufficiency syndromes and pyruvate reductase are the most common causes found in different studies. Then this is the classification. This classification was published in 2006 and still it is relevant because they had given a classification which was etiology based. So broadly, there was a categorization of the sex chromosome DSD, then 46XY DSD and 46XX DSD. In sex chromosome DSD is if sex chromosome they itself are atypical, like no XX or XY is not there, some different karyotype is there, then that will fall in that. In 46XY DSD, karyotype is XY, then there may be defect in the gonadal development. So that may lead to gonadal dysgenesis or over-testicular DSD. Other than that, 46XY people may have undervirilization. So that undervirilization is due to mostly either testosterone synthesis defect or action defect. These are the broad categories. Or another one very rare condition like LH receptor defect. That is totally altogether different thing, but may come as XY-DSD. And we can also see Mullerian hormone secretion or action defect, which may come as internal genital atypia, not external. Coming to 46XX-DSD, in that again, one category may be gonadal developmental disorders. So karyotype is 46XX, but there may be over-testicular DSD, testicular XX testicular DSD, or gonadal dysgenesis. Other than that, all XX DSD will be due to overt virilization. So there will be some source of androgens. So that source may be adrenal, ovary, maternal, or external. So these are the four broad categories. In that, we can see CAH, that is still 21 hydroxylase deficiency, is the most common cause overall, because this is the most prevalent thing in around the world. After that, rare uncommon types of CAH are also possible. Then aromatase deficiency, POR deficiency, maternal causes, maternal luteoma, or exogenous, like if mother has taken metotrexate large dosage during antenatal period, that may also cause atypia. And other than that, in females, we can see some anatomical, like higher up defects, which may cause defective development of the action genitalia without any hormonal causes, like MRKH or MRUCS. That is another possibility. So this is these are the categories. So that classification was based on etiology. Dimorphic gonadal development is primarily decided by the sex chromosomes, and in association with the sex chromosome, autosomes also work with those sex chromosomes. So interaction between the autosomes responsible for genital development with sex chromosome is the it causes the normal development of the sex. Any interruption between this interaction will lead to DSD. So right amount of the right hormone along with the functioning receptor at the right time is needed to make a normal anatomical sex. So these are some. This is like this diagram is very simplified. The interaction of these genes is very complicated. Still, we can say that from bipotential gonad, when a gonad ovary or testis develops, there is interaction of many genes, and we can call some pro-ovary genes like RISPR1, WNT beta-catenin pathway, FOXL2, BMP2, CATA4. These are the pro-ovary genes, and these are the pro-testis genes. And out of these, we can say SOX9, FOXL2, and WNT beta-catenin pathway, these are mutually exclusive. So one will act, so another will not act. So there is mutual inhibition of these genes, and that will decide what type of gonad will be there. So defect of these genes may be there, that a person with XX may have a gonad which may have both components, or vice versa also true. So so this is how these genes play, but this is very simplified, I can say. So if there is a defect in gonadal development, absence of the gonadal development will lead to complete gonadal dysgenesis. Partial gonadal development will lead to partial gonadal dysgenesis. And if it is atypical to the chromosome sex, then it will be X excessively DSD. And both components are there, then it will be an ovotestis. Coming to the external genitalia. So one was the defect in the gonadal development. Then another is the defect in the development of the external genitalia due to underlying hormonal imbalance. So what are the three, I will say three things in this slide we should remember. There are three parts of embryology: genital tubercle, urethral folds, and labioskeletal swelling. So from these three things, genital tubercle, here is urethral folds, and these are the labioskeletal swelling. So this genital tubercle will form in a glans penis in the male child. This will lead to clitoris in the female child. This urethral fold will become rest of the penis here, and in female child this will become labia minora, and that labioskeletal swelling will become scrotum and labia majora respectively. So this is how it develops, and for this all this to happen, there is a critical window, that is 8 to 14 weeks of gestation. We call it masculinization programmatic window. Anything happens in DSD will include this window. So this is very important. In context with this window, we have another condition that we call testicular vanishing syndrome. Anything happens to the testis before this window, that will lead to undervitalization and it will come like DSD. But anything happens after that, then it does not cause ambiguity. It will cause, it may cause micropenis, but it will not cause ambiguity. So that is important. So vanishing syndrome testis, like it happens after this window. And we should know that testosterone and dihydrotestosterone are the most important androgens intrauterine and extrauterine life to make normal genitalia in males. So coming to the evaluation and the care of a child with DSD, what are our aims? What are the aims we keep in mind? Prevent short wasting crisis. First thing, that medical emergency should be handled expeditiously. After that, to provide an accurate diagnosis as far as possible, because we need to assess a social emergency, that is to address the gender assignment, because it is very, especially I think in Indian society is very cumbersome that once you don't tell the parents what the child is, it's very difficult to discharge them. So it's a social emergency for them. To guide for future management plan, that is surgery regarding timing, how extensive surgery will be, steps, hormonal replacement, fertility, and risk of tumors. All the things we need to gradually counsel them and we need to guide them. So what are the tools we have to go through this pathway? History, examination, hormonal, genetic, and radiological evaluation. We will conclude these and we'll make a diagnosis. So a multidisciplinary team is required to go through all these: pediatric endocrine or endocrine person, pediatric urology person, psychologist, geneticist, radiologist, neonatologist, or a social worker. All the people required to guide the family through this pathway. So clues from the history: history of consanguinity, unexplained infant deaths, family history of infertility or gynecomastia, family history of either amenorrheic or infertile aunts or partially virilized uncles. This is important. Many times family will not tell anything, but when you ask that, and is there any infertility in the females or males, then they will tell. And virilization during pregnancy, early renal failure, and use of progesterone during certain abortions. So these are some clues we can reach to a specific diagnosis. Then coming to clinical examination. So during clinical examination, description of the genitalia is very important. So these are the 4 points we should note always, and better to make a diagram. So we can avoid repeated examinations, because this is very cumbersome for a family that you are exposing a child's genitalia again and again. We are doing many things. So that should not happen. First examination should be thorough and it should be represented in a picture. So what are the things we should note? Gonads palpable or not? If they are palpable, where are they? Is there any asymmetry? Degree of the labioskeletal fusion and anogenital index. Anogenital index is this distance between the anus and foresheet upon distance between the anus and the clitoris. That is called anogenital index. So like it will be around 1 in the male and around 0.5 in the female. So if it is towards 1, it means that there is posterior fusion. So there is some degree of relation. So this is the importance of this index. Size of the phallus, then location of the urethral opening. This is very important. And then Is there any single opening consisting urogenital sinus, or there are two openings? That we should note. Then we should also note during physical examination, is there any sign, if there are any signs of adrenal insufficiency in form of the hyperpigmentation or weight loss or shock or hypoglycemia. Then when we are examining the genitalia, it should be as objective as possible. And to make it objective, we have some scales. So this EMS is the external muscularization score that includes 4 points. That is scrotal fusion, size of the phallus, urethral meatus, and the position of the gonads. So it gives total 12 points. And improvised version of this is EGS, that is external genitalia score. In this, there are these points are same, but that is more graduated, because in this we can see that there is no or yes. In between there is nothing. In this also there is yes or no. In between there is nothing. So in this EGS, they have graduation in 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2.5 in all these points. So we can make more objective assessment. Similarly, there is another scale, Prader, like this is Prader's staging. In that, at stage 1, before that, normal females will be there, and stage 5, normal male genital will be there. In between will be the different degrees of virilization categories. So in this, we note two things. One will be the size of the phallus or clitoris. That will represent degree of virilization. Another will be the posterior fusion. So stage 3 onwards, there will be single opening, because this much posterior fusion has happened that there are no two openings. You can see here, this is single opening, and in stage 2, there are two openings. So before stage 3, there will be two openings. After that, there will be one opening. Right. Then coming to a child, actually what we do. A child has come, like we could not assign a gender, then what we should do? Stereotype, we should do all children. Then ultrasound, like these are things we can get immediately. Ultrasound to see the internal genitalia. It will give us some idea. We will see how it will give. And CH should be ruled out in every patient, unless we have very clear diagnosis that we have asymmetrical gonads, and we are very likely thinking that it's a chromosomal DSD. In those, except those scenarios, almost every child we should rule out CS, because that is another medical that may lead to another medical emergency. After that, during examination, we will see, are there gonads palpable or not? If palpable, it is either XY DSD with palpable gonads, or it is XX testicular DSD. And we will go ahead with these two diagnoses. If no gonad palpable, if there is asymmetry, yes, then it is most likely chromosomal DSD. If not, then both XX and XY DSD are possible. Then we will go with some hormonal profile, like adrenal axis hormones, with again USG we will see, and we will conclude all the reports. If 17-OHP raised significantly, it is CH, classic CH. If modestly raised, then it may be other type of CH we are dealing. If all are normal, 17-OHP, ACTH, and cortisol, then it is unlikely that we are dealing with CH. Then our diagnosis is open still, XX-DSD and XY-DSD. Then what will happen? In XX-DSD, these are the categories we should know. We should know aromatase deficiency, P450 oxidase, maternal source of the androgen, external source of the androgen, or anatomical defects. So there are some clues to all these diagnoses. If we have clue, then we will go ahead. Otherwise, we need extensive evaluation. Usually in XX-DSD, we are able to reach a diagnosis most of the conditions. Coming to XY-DSD, with or without palpable gonads, either it will be testosterone synthetic defect. So these highlighted like in bold are the testosterone synthesis defect, which are part of the CAH. Others are not part of the CH. They are isolated androgen synthetic defects. Or it may be androgen action defect. Syndrome PAIs and CIs both. LH receptor defect, AMH action, AMH secretion or receptor defect, or gonadal dysgenesis. These are the other categories we need to think of. Then there are some investigation we will do. They should be done, hormonal profile should be done either during mini puberty or after excitation stimulation, because after mini puberty goes, we won't find anything in the hormonal profile. So that is there. Then we will do all these things. LH, FSH, testo, some testosterone DST ratio, testosterone ratio, AMH, and USG pelvis. So these are the things we will try to conclude with some diagnosis. So supranormal or normal testosterone will have two diagnoses mostly, AIS or 5-alpha reductase deficiency. If both are like low testosterone but AMH is normal, it means mostly we are dealing with the testosterone bisynthetic defect isolated. If both are both are low, then it is dysgenesis, and testosterone is low with the high LH, then LH receptor defect should be sought for. So coming to what is the role of the genetic tools? Briefly, I will go through this. Karyotype we will do in all. If karyotype we have found something, then it is diagnostic. Many times we will get a diagnosis of MGD with karyotype only, so that is confirmed. If we don't, then if karyotype is typical XX or XY, then we will go. Is there any other deformity in child's examination that may lead to a specific diagnosis? Then we will do array first to see copy number variations, and that may lead to a diagnosis. If it is not, then we will go with the targeted gene or gene panel sequencing. Mostly nowadays we do exome sequencing. Still, we may get diagnosis in XY DHD after all these things. Less than 50% children get a diagnosis. So if we do not have any diagnosis, then MDT should be consulted, and we should have a management plan in discussion with the parents. So that's it. Coming to the gender assignment, these things we will discuss again in the evening class. These are the factors we take in account when we are deciding for gender. So what is the degree of masculinization, appearance of the internal genitalia, extent of the surgical intervention needed, what are the fertility prospects or need of hormone replacement after the surgery, risk of the tumor occurrence, and what is the psychosexual aspect of the patient. So that what is the risk of the gender dysphoria, what is the gender identity, role, and sexual orientation of the person. These are the very important points to consider when we are deciding for a gender assignment. In general, 17 beta HSD3 and 5 alpha adductase we tend towards a male because mostly they will realize in puberty and they will have sex reversal if you have raised them as a female. But this is not universal truth. So what are the take-home messages from this class? Ambiguous genitalia is not uncommon in our clinics. Medical emergency should be taken care of first. Social emergency should be dealt with compassion. Hand-holding of the parents is required through evaluation, gender assignment, surgery, hormone replacement, fertility management, and monitoring of the tumors. Along with that, medico-legal aspect should also be taken care of, and multidisciplinary team is required to manage these cases. Thank you.